In the third part of tonight's class, we got into an interesting discussion on researching and networking and sources, and are they safe and are they not safe, and how do you know if they're safe? And we also discussed the misconceptions that we hold so dear and the damage that does to us and how to get out of it. If you can, drop a like. Thank you so much.
I was going to say, that's so fascinating. Not to take us on too much of a tangent, but I'll throw this in there. We've actually almost done the reverse when it comes to researching things for Noahides. Because when we were online, we had such a hard time because there's so much that we don't know, not knowing like what was good information and what was maybe a little bit flaky. And so we almost cocooned ourselves with like, we have our couple of like Orthodox friends in Israel, one of whom was raised in Noahide and then eventually converted to Orthodox Judaism. And so it's like we had them, and we've been very fortunate to like have a little bit of a relationship with our rabbi here in town, and like that's it. We had like one YouTube channel that we watched, and then that was it, because we're like, well, we don't want to get the wrong information in on accident. So I guess my question is like, how do you go about like vetting information?
I think what you're saying is so true, Natalie. It's very, very true. And it's always the danger of just opening yourself up. And that's why it will be really good. Let's say like you found a website or, to go to that Orthodox rabbi and say, can you tell me in general, is this kosher? And if he doesn't know, maybe someone who knows more in the Noahide world, find a rabbi that's more knowledgeable in the Noahide world to say, before I go into this as a source of information, is it kosher? Because you're absolutely right. There is plenty out there that isn't. Plenty.
Noah is
and there's plenty that is. And it's, there's certainly, messianics. And there's a lot of different stuff out there, under the Noahide umbrella. Nobody needs to prove any credentials to start their own website or start a Facebook group or anything. Now, sometimes, of course, you sort of develop a smell for it. Like, this doesn't seem kosher, what they're saying. It doesn't seem in sync with what I picked up so far. So I don't know. I better like do a little more research or ask someone. And sometimes initially. So in other words, it goes in both directions. I think it's great to know there's a lot of resources. And I think what you're saying is very true. Just like in a purely secular way, if there was a health issue and you were Googling for information about this health issue, well, also some could be legit and some could be flaky. And some could be people trying to make money off you. And some could be people that just don't know what they're talking about. All of that is possible. And some could be very, very real and very true. So, it's always true that you do need some type of situation, some type of way to like be able to screen. And one good way is if you do know an Orthodox Jewish rabbi or someone who's very strongly knowledgeable in Judaism, and then just ask them, and they might say, I have no clue. Well, can you find someone that does, to know, is this yes or not, where I should go for my information.
Yeah, well,
I think what Beth is saying is true, and I think what you're saying is true. I think it's really true, this idea of there's a lot of resources out there, and I think what you're saying is true, and they're not all kosher. And then that's the balancing of figuring out how to find the kosher resources, because there's so many resources out there. Now, obviously,
it's wonderful.
As said, for the just general Jewish, understanding, yes, Chabad.org is great, and yes, you can Google almost everything about anything and find it in nice English. But when you're going specifically into Noahide, like in everything else, like in any other group you've ever been in your whole life, is, there's a whole spectrum, all different, shades and colors, and everyone's allowed to call themselves and believe they are authentic Noahides. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Very, very true point.
What really turned us off was we met a couple and they used the phrase a lot, well, Jews do it this way, but we do it that way. And you've probably heard the expression, don't be more Catholic than the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like they were trying to be more Jewish than the Jews, like Orthodox Jews. That one really kind of made me hesitant, because I'm like, really though?
And you're saying these were Noahides that were just like saying, Jews do it this way, but we're going to do it even better?
Yeah, and that really kind of turned us off.
Anyone else had that type of experience? Or in general, where they went into a group and then realized it wasn't as kosher as they thought?
No, all the Noahide groups that I got in contact with, they were really adamant that Noahides are Noahides and Jews are Jews, and you don't, there's boundaries, yes, Noahides can do, some stuff, but you got to be careful how you do it. You don't want to blur the lines too much. And so really most of them were very much, Noahides are Noahides, Jews are Jews, and we're not trying to act like Jews while we're Noahides. We're not doing that. So I haven't had that experience. No. Noahide gathering's really good.
Well, I think I'm going to ask you for, speaking of networking, I'm going to ask you for a list of the good ones.
Becca, maybe you could type it up in the chat so then she could just copy it, or anyone else can just copy it.
I would, but my keyboard is not working.
Okay, so are you, Becca, are you on our WhatsApp group?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So why don't you post it? Yes, of course, I know you're on our WhatsApp group. You always post. I'm sorry, my brain, a little fuzzy brain this moment. So when you can, write it on the WhatsApp group.
Okay.
Then you can just post it on the WhatsApp group, and probably when you post it, other people will see it, because it's not everyone's on tonight, and they can say, oh, I use this. Oh, I didn't know. Thank you so much. So I think it would be actually an even better way to help people, just listing, addendum from the class. These are the resources, the Noahide resources I use that I find helpful. Natalie, are you on the WhatsApp group?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay,
great.
Good.
Everyone here is on the WhatsApp group. If you're not and you have WhatsApp, let me know. If you're not and you'd like a copy of it, you could put in the chat your email or your texting number, and I'll just copy paste and send it to you personally. Or if you're not on the WhatsApp group and have WhatsApp, give me your number and ask me to put on the WhatsApp group. You could send a chat for everyone, or you could send a private chat for me. So that way, I think whatever Becca's going to post will help everyone here. And also, I think will help people that are not here tonight. And also, I think it will stimulate other people to share the Noahide resources they've used. Else that sometimes happens. We spoke a lot now about resources and good points about resources. Something else that sometimes happens that takes a situation and makes it seem impossible, even though it really is possible, is sort of limiting preconceptions we have. And it's really important to recognize them and work on getting out of them. Like, for example, a person could think, well, successful mother has a nutritious supper of at least a protein, a vegetable, and a starch every night on the table at 5:30. I never have that. Or my husband must never think of anyone or anything more than me. I always must be number one in his world at any given moment. Now, those are both really beautiful ideas, but they don't necessarily happen in real life. And they for sure don't necessarily happen all the time. So when people have these expectations, which create for some people impossible situations, not that these are impossible expectations, but they're not always. And you still can be a good mother, and you still can have a good marriage without these specific ones that I just said. So the challenge is that it's hard to recognize our own limiting thoughts, our own false premises, because we believe in them very, very, very strongly. They're so wrapped up in our psyche. So the sages say that if you have a problem, if you have a worry, you should talk it over with someone else. Not meaning a gossiping session, not meaning a venting session. Those aren't usually very helpful. But a focused conversation, ideally without names if possible, to have someone else's take on your situation. Because just sometimes another person has clearer perspective because they're not in your situation. They're outside it. So when you're outside, it's much easier to see, and it's much easier for them to realize if your thinking is off. So if you're talking to someone and you're sharing and they're going to point out and say, I think your thinking is off. I don't think what you're saying is true. I don't think that's an axiom that always has to be. Well, then they point it out for you, and now you have the challenge of accepting that they're correct and your assumption and your vision is wrong. That's hard. We need some humility for that. And also, you might think this other person's wrong, or at least wrong in terms of your situation. Like maybe for some people she's right, but in your situation she's wrong. And in your situation, there has to be that supper on the table 5:30, that being number 1, 2, and 3 in any situation with your husband. So if you're in that space of like, somebody's pointing out to you how your assumptions are wrong, but you don't know if they're right, you do is talk it over with a few other people. You don't have to go through the whole conversation, but just this point, do you agree or disagree that this is a misconception, or this is the healthier way to think, healthier way to deal with a situation? If you have 3 other people, you should come up with a clear picture. So if it happened and you discussed it with one person, discussed it with another person, discussed it, you came to understanding that this is what has to change. So then you have to change. And that, of course, is a big challenge. Even once you got it intellectually and you accept it and you researched, you took the polls and everyone's in agreement. We'll make it really simple. Everyone agrees that other person's right and everyone agrees that your vision is wrong. So it's really, obviously in life, it's not usually so clear cut, but we're going to make it clear cut. So then you have the challenge still, even if you absolutely realize, okay, I guess they're right. Okay, I guess my vision is wrong. It's still a challenge to modify your perspective to a healthier, to a more achievable, to a happier one. But it really, really helps. Because so often I see people that are so unhappy and so stuck because of perspective, because of demands they put on themselves that are not realistic, because of visions of the world that are not realistic, and that just create a lot of misery. So if demanding a daily supper of a protein, a starch, and a vegetable all sitting on the table at 5:30 is too difficult for your life and your demands, you can modify the way you think and say, a good mother prepares supper for her kids. Ideally with the starch and the protein and the vegetable, ideally served at 5:30. But sometimes it's later, and sometimes it's skippier, and that's okay too, as long as it's happening. That's such just a kind to yourself, liberating, removing a burden that doesn't need to be there. We've got enough burdens that we can't remove. So let's get rid of the ones we can. My husband should prioritize me, but I'm not always in front of everything else in line. And as long as I'm like in the top 3, and sometimes number 1, we're doing good. We're doing okay. Our marriage is so fun. Instead of this impossible to attain demand that I'm always number 1, and no matter what's going on in his life, I'm number 1, and nothing should ever come before me. And then things do. And then there's so much frustration and upsetness in the marriage that doesn't have to be there if you just change your vision. Think as we hear our friends talking to us. If we think what they're saying is off and that they're creating expectations and demands on themselves or others, it's just not healthy. It's just making things hard where it doesn't have to be hard. So it'd be good in a kind, compassionate, nurturing way, a way to help the other person, to point out that maybe it doesn't have to be the way you're thinking. It could be the way you're thinking. But if it's not working for you right now in your life, maybe it doesn't have to be. And maybe that might be easier. So again, that's just something to think about when we're looking at our impossible but gonna happen situation, sometimes cross-checking our visions and our perspectives, and a healthy reality check on like, should I believe in this or should I not be believing this, could sometimes really lessen a lot of tension, a lot of frustration, a lot of difficulties. So as we look at our own vision, All right, we will stop at this point. So thank you so much for joining, Becca. We look forward to you adding a lot on the group. And no one put up any private contact information for me, so I assume you're all on the WhatsApp group. And I assume, Becca, if you label it and explain what you're putting up and why you're putting it up, invite others to share, and who knows, there'll be a whole wealth of resources that should be useful and beneficial for everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
It's so
you.
nice, and
Good
we should
luck.
really be able to take these ideas and move with them forward. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
and Erica, I'm so glad you made it.
Thank you to
Yes,
you all.
thank you. Thank you.